for myself. So I'm going to start out with just a little bit of a review. The last time we talked about chapter 2, and what the author focuses on is purity and reverence. And what we mostly talked about last time was reverence, and how reverence is the word that where she was focusing on is the word is like a phobos, which is the word that we get phobia from. It has to do with fear, but just having more of a healthy fear for God, and that we obey and we do things God's way, let's say it this way, and not our way, because we respect him, we fear him, we have a reverence for him. And so that's such a key thing when we're talking about, what a reverence is and what our attitude needs to be. And then as I've been thinking about it, then she goes to this next verse, and she talks about Titus in Titus 2:3. And another Greek word for reverence is used there in Titus 2:3. And I'll go ahead and read it. It says, "Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good." And one of the things that's cool about this definition of reverence is that this definition of reverence means more like to consecrate yourself, to be devoted, to belong to God, to say everything about you is about God. And Virginia Leffler talks about how this is something we do as we get mature, is we learn to devote ourselves to God. It has to do with holiness, because when you're devoted to God, you're more, you're holy and your life is pure. And that brings us to the whole concept of purity, which is really a lot of the second part of the book, or the last section of the second chapter, I guess I should say. And that has to do with, the purity and having a purity of motive, and having, and it's just so convicting how she talks about how she decided she was going to even get rid of the grumbling in her heart, towards her husband. So, and she was not only going to have right actions, but she was going to have right motives. And I thought, man, she even fasted and everything and begged God to help her have the right motive in her heart. And I thought that was so convicting, because that's where it all really comes from, is from our heart. And what I really like that she said is, let's see if we can find it. A lot of notes here. She talked about how it helps her to have peace, and that she really well, I'm not finding, I've got so many notes here that I'm not finding that quote right there, but she basically said that she was really able to have peace more when she was able to do this. And I think that's really cool. I think that really is that, I think sometimes we think, it's something we do, but, she actually felt better when she was able to give it up. So I have something I was thinking about that to me was a little bit revolutionary as I was reading this chapter. And that is that I kind of felt like, I've always kind of felt like, as women, and we're supposed to submit to our husbands if we're married, and such. We're supposed to let the men lead. And I thought this, as we as women think, okay, we're the ones who need to submit, it kind of makes, maybe you guys, I don't know, you can give me a thumbs up or something, but I would feel like, it's kind of like the men get to do whatever they want to do, but we have to kind of follow their lead. We have to, we don't get to do as much. We don't have the same kind of freedom and choices. And I began to realize that in the Bible, the whole theme is that everybody submits. It's not just women who are, and of course, yes, women do submit to the leadership of men, and wives to their husbands, but that is the way of the Bible. It's just like what we talked about last week, and what we did a couple of midweeks ago was about the importance of taking the way of the cross. And that's what all Christians do. And it's like Jesus, it said, he learned obedience from what he suffered. That says this in Hebrews. And he was heard because of his reverent submission. Notice there again that there's that word reverence. And that even Jesus was submitting. And when we read in Ephesians 5, how husbands are to love their wives, just like Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it. What it does is it shows us that once again, husbands have to submit as well. Husbands have things they've got to. Hello, Kiona. Husbands have to live a life like Christ as well, a life of submitting to God and submitting to his ways and doing things his ways. And so now here's what might seem a little radical. And that is, what if, this is just a thought I had, what if women actually have the greatest calling because we're the ones who are demonstrating submission the best? What if, and it's suggested in 1 Peter 3, because it talks about how wives can save their husbands through their example. And it says, in this way, women used to make themselves beautiful, and this is beautiful to God. And if us surrendering to God and letting him completely be in control is beautiful, and it's the best way, and it's the way that God wants all of us to be, we as women really, in a way, can, just by our example of being still, of being surrendered, can, in a sense, that's a way of saving the world. Now, is this crazy to you? Are you guys following me? What do you think about what I've said right there?
I wanted to share that I think that is, I never saw it like that before, but I think it's very true because, it's like when we surrender, it's like we not only surrender to our husband or to our leaders, but we are surrendered to God because he put those people in our life for a reason. Like he put the leaders, the men to lead, and the husband to lead. But it's like when we submit to them, we actually directly submitting to God because he made that decision. He is the one that made things the way it is. It's like everything happened because God allowed it. So if God allow us to have any man in our life that is giving that role, we should be grateful, and we should work on just being humble and submitting to them because of God.
No, I think you're exactly right, Marisol. I like what you said, because God is the one who did this. God is the one who put whatever situation we're in, whether whoever is in our life, whether it's a husband, whether it's a leader, a boss, whatever situation we're in, God is what allowed it to be in that way. And I'm thinking of, it reminds me of the verse. I was thinking of this when I woke up early this morning and couldn't sleep. Lamentations, we always love in Lamentations where the song, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. And we always read that, but later in the same passage, it says, it is in verse 26 in chapter 3 of Lamentations. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke while he is young. Let him sit alone in silence, for the Lord has laid it on him. And that is, the Lord sometimes allows us to go through things. What did Jesus pray in the garden? Not my will, but your will be done. That's, that is the very crux of our existence, of our existence as a Christian, is not my will, but your will be done. Whatever you allow me to go through. And, and it says, okay, here's a good assignment for one of you guys, because I didn't look this up. I just know it. It says the verse that says those who suffer according to God's will should submit and continue to do good. Something along those lines. Can anybody find that verse?
I can find it. Yes.
I think it's something like those who suffer according to the will of the.
Okay.
I can find it real quick if I need to.
I think it's let's see.
Are you
Yeah,
talking about 1 Peter 2?
What is it?
Are you talking about 1 Peter 2:13?
No, read that though. What does it say?
Oh, let's just talk about authority.
Well, is it a good scripture to share?
It's it's 1 Peter 4:19 says, so
yeah,
then
that's
those
what it
who
is.
suffer.
Yeah, what does that
Yes.
say, Markia?
It says, so then those who suffer according to God's will should commit themselves to their faithful creator and continue to do good.
Isn't that, think about that. Wow, sometimes we suffer according to God's will. And, all the early disciples, most all of them were persecuted. And so there's a certain sense in that, we do want, that sometimes life is going to be hard. It's not always going to be out about our comfort or anything. And so we as women, and even think about in Philippians 2, where it says do everything. Is that Philippians 2 or Ephesians 2, where it says do everything without arguing and complaining? It's Philippians 2. So you can shine like stars. And so as women, we have this unique opportunity to shine like stars. And think about this too, because in this verse in Titus 2:3, that it says, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live. And then it goes on later to say, so that they can teach what is good. It's like they have a calling to teach others to be reverent, to teach others how to be still before God, how to not be like, I always want to be like, no, I don't like this, and I'm mad, and I hate it, and it's wrong, but yet we can be the ones to let our light shine in that way. It's a pretty wild thing. I think it's really encouraging. Any thoughts before I go on? Well, I have one more thing I want to say with this that I thought I really loved, sort of what came to me that helped me remember this, because I was trying to think of several ways. It's like when we're in a situation that's tough, maybe a tough one to submit. What should we remember from these things we've been learning about purity and about reverence? And I came up with the acronym SSHH. Be still, surrender, holy, and his, like belonging to him. And this covers all of the aspects that we've been talking about, that you're reverent, and when you're reverent, you do things God's way. You decide not to do things your way, you do things God's way. And that you also are consecrated to God, you're his. And that as you're consecrated, that means that you're cleansing yourself from things that are worldly or that are just selfish, and you're holy. So again, SSHH, still, you still yourself, surrender, holy, and his. And of course, when you put that together, it's and that's like being still, it's like, let me just shh myself. Now, this is not to say that wonderful sisters like Kiona and Marisol, who have a large personality, you can still have a large personality and be quiet and gentle, because it has to do with submitting to God. It doesn't have to be. Now, Katira has a nice, quiet and gentle spirit a lot of times, where you can see that, but you can have a large, boisterous, flamboyant personality still be surrendered to God. So it doesn't mean that we have to all be just very quiet and mousy. So I'm going to take and I'm going to pause for just a minute for comments, and then I think I'm going to go into us looking at a few situations and ask y'all, using these concepts, or these principles, what do you think you would do in certain situations? So. Oh, you know what? And I have one more thing I want to talk about before we bring up the situations. And that's in addition to the other things I think we want to look at when we're trying to decide what to do in these situations, because we get into a lot of confusing situations, is number one, have I communicated my position or need clearly to the other person? Because a relationship is built on truth. It says to speak the truth in love. You don't want a relationship where, for 40 years you've been cooking your husband fried eggs, and all the while he just didn't even like them. He just was trying to be nice. Like, no, tell me what you like, because I want to cook what you like. A relationship needs to be built on honesty. So you do have, and sometimes we just think our husband should just know, I've had a thing lately where I've had the dishes, I've had me washing them in the sink while we're doing contract. And it's like, my Ken should just know that he should be helping more. Well, no, you got to communicate. It just doesn't work quite like that. And then the other, quickly, the other thing I wanted to mention that I think is so important as we're dealing with these reverence, purity, submission kinds of issues is, what are your boundaries? And figuring this out, because we all know in Matthew 18, Jesus says, if your brother sins against you, go and talk to them. And if they don't listen, then you bring in someone else. So what this means is you don't just sit there, even though we've talked about that sometimes, it's God allows us to suffer. And sometimes we take the way of the cross, but God, there's also a provision that you just don't have to sit there and just have people abuse you, people sin against you. that there is a provision about, if somebody's sinning against you, you go and you talk to them. You have boundaries. There are things you don't allow. So just thinking about what is okay, what is not okay. Because there are some things that maybe are okay and some things that aren't. Obviously, your husband's, cussing you out. Well, that I would think most of us think, no, that's not okay. And that's a boundary. The same goes with anybody in your life, that you, even if they're in a position of authority, we got the Me Too movement. It's like, no, even if you're my boss, there's certain things you cannot do. So I think we should all think about that as we do this. Okay. If somebody doesn't, unless somebody has a question, I'm going to bring up a few of these situations. These are real situations. Okay. Number one, I need some participation here. What about when you have a husband who has an activity on the weekend that takes him away for long periods of time, and he just kind of assumes that he can do that and that you will take care of the family?
I guess
Okay, what do you think, Marisol?
I think I would I will actually discuss that with him and be like, you know what, if we're gonna do this, let's do teamwork. You cook this and I cook that, and just let's do it, but let's do it together. Help me out. I don't want to do all this cooking for all of these people, but it would be nice that you can help me too. It's your family, and it would be nice that your family can know, oh, he knows how to cook. So let's cook. Let's cook together.
Okay. So for Marisol, communication was a big one there. Speaking the truth in love, going ahead and communicating about it. That was a big one. Respectfully. We're talking about being respectful. Oh, wait, shouldn't we just submit though? If he says, I'm going to go, should we just say, wait, okay, he's a leader. So if he wants to go off and do this, then just let him go.
I think that I will get a Ken in there to help him.
What's that?
I will get Ken in there to help him. If I don't feel like he don't listen to me, I will tell Ken, be like, Ken, I need some help.
You call my husband. Okay, I got it. that can be an option, because it does say in Matthew 18, you bring somebody else in if they won't listen. So anybody else have some thoughts in that situation? What is it, Kathy?
Yeah, I would probably just let my husband go in that, but now I'm learning how to not do that, stick up for myself a little bit. So the same thing, communication, I'd say, well, wait, this isn't really, right to put it all on me, even though he used to do that all the time. So I think, yeah, just learning to talk respectfully. It's really not what you say, it's how you say it, in love. In love.
Yeah, in love. Yeah, that's great, Kathy. See, with a voice of experience here, in love, in remembering. I always say remembering to think the best of them, not the worst. When you're doing it, not like you always do this to me. That's not going to go over very well.
Right.
I know you want to be a good husband. I know you want to be a good father. Can we work something out here? Something. I like. Katira says, I agree with Marisol, have a discussion about it, respect his need for free time, but voice the burden it puts on you. That sounds good. Okay. Here's one. What do you do when the men in a church group don't step up and lead? It could be the married men, it could be the campus men, the single men.
You can respectfully be respectful and be like, and suggest, can I suggest this, brother? Can I suggest this? My husband, I think suggestion is a great way to get to the person and not to feel that you like you wanted to do it yourself, but you can suggest.
Mhm. Okay. Anybody else have some thoughts?
I don't know if this is right, but I would say, you know, is there something we can do, and ask, you know, in a situation, and ask them, and if, you know, if they're thinking that way, or just saying it, is there something we should or could do? That's all I could think of. And
Like in
pray,
that,
pray,
go ahead.
obviously, and obviously pray, you know,
Right, right.
give me the right words.
Right, so you're just saying, is there, something, maybe I could step up and help plan or something, or is that what you're saying? We as the women, with something we can do to help, organize or plan, is that what you're saying?
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's tricky, isn't it? I wonder, how do we apply the being still, the being surrendered, the being holy and being his in that situation? I think one thing we want to be careful to do is to not get frustrated. You know, we're imperfect, others are imperfect. And I think what I know I can do a lot of times in a situation that something like that is I can just start getting frustrated, and then I don't have the heart at peace, like it's talking about in the gentle and quiet spirit. I'm not still before God. I'm terrible about being still before God. So notice that the change happens when it talks about husbands are won over without words. The change happens when you get to that purity and reverence place in your life. Kind of like anything else, when you seek the kingdom first, then these things happen as well. So there is something to be said for getting our hearts right. Now, Marisol, I don't know if you would feel comfortable sharing the example you told me earlier about your husband being harsh.
You share it, because
Okay, you got
this
your
house
headphones in
is
now. Yes, right. Okay, so
kind of
this
small.
is what she told me. She said that Carrie was being she felt like maybe being a little harsh with her. And she said, you know what? He has the Holy Spirit. Yeah, I'm going to let the Holy Spirit convict him on this. And she prayed about it. And he said, a few days later, he says, you know what? I had a dream. And in my dream, I realized I was being too harsh to you. So I'm sorry. I was like, man, how many times do I even ask the Holy Spirit to intervene? That's great. I'm like, man, I'm convicted. That's great. So, let's ask the Spirit to help us sometimes.
Talking is not the best. That's when you get more problem. Sometimes you can ask God, and God will speak to the person. If sometimes it's like that. It's so funny.
That takes such faith. That's great.
I done that before with different people too. Not with one person. I pray to God to make it clear to the person that they wrong, and they come back to me and be like, oh, I'm sorry. I was like, yeah, I knew that it was coming. God is in control, because I let it go, but then the person would come back to me and say sorry. So
you know what? That's great. I mean, I know it's not going to always, but let's give the Spirit a chance to work sometimes. Yeah. That is that is really great. Yeah. How about if you have a boss and they seem to be giving preferential treatment to other employees and not you?
Mm.
Can you repeat that, Kat?
If you have a boss at work who you feel like is, giving preferential treatment to other employees, they're giving them perks, they're giving them, they're doing what the other employees want, but then when you ask for something, they're not doing what you want.
What used to help me, Kat, I used to think about Colossians 3, was talk about work as if you're working for the Lord and not for man. Basically you receiving your reward already. So, just think about pleasing God and not man.
That's a good one. I love this. This is just so good. Just talking about, when the author was saying have right actions and right motives. That's a great one for that. Kathy says, forgive the boss. That is a great one. I mean, man, wouldn't your light be shining when you're forgiving the boss? That is, it sort of reminds me, when it talks about lawsuits between believers in the Bible, it says, why not rather be wronged? That's such a hard concept. It's a foreign concept. Obviously, there are times when there does need to be, we stand up for justice, but yeah, I like that. Any other thoughts as far as that goes?
I think it would require a lot of vulnerability to do, but even, talking with the boss, like learning about, some of the things that they do like as far as, different ideas go, or asking them if there are ways that you can improve or different things like that. Like I said, that takes some vulnerability as well, but might help the situation, and may even, if the boss is having some like ill intentions, it may convict them, seeing basically that you're aware of the treatment, but you're trying to see how you can grow and improve.
No, you know what? I like that. That is, it's, being proactive. It's not putting them on the defensive. It's making it about you in a sense. But it does give them a chance to step up and say, oh, I should be doing that. So, so I think that's good. And another situation I was thinking about was, I mentioned earlier about the dishes, and I was having a hard time with that. And I don't know why sometimes it's hard for us to have the talk that we need to have. But I finally this morning said, I thought, no, I'm teaching this class. I need to set a good example somehow. So I just said, you know what? Ken, just tell me about the dishes and what you're thinking. I didn't try to put any words in it that might be triggers or anything, just like, like I think he's doing wrong or he should, or, and so he told me, and it turns out, I think they're not even really on his radar, and we're using paper bowls and plates. He's like, well, I throw those away. So, I was like, he's like, yes, we do cook with pots and pans though. So anyway, it was good though. And I could have been resentful. I was trying not to be. Just, having clear, without an agenda, kind of just talk, just speaking the truth in love. Let's just talk. A relationship is based on talk. So I think that was very helpful. All right, now Kiona, I don't know if you're tied up there swimming or something, but you had some questions. Do you have any questions or situations?
Questions about
Well, when we were doing last week, you had questions and I said, we'll have to wait till next time.
Hmm.
We were talking about what submission looks like in the 21st century. Some of those things.
Yeah. I have to get the questions that I have to get counseling before I bring them to the group.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Well, let me see.
Where is it?
Kiana? Oh,
Yes.
I don't
I'm
know. I
here.
thought you were going to say, are you unmuted? I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, no.
All right.
I really appreciate the comment that Katera made, and I would like her to text me that because I'm probably going to forget it.
That'd be good. You can do that. It was good. She knows the wording on that too. That was really good. So, so here's a couple of questions that kind of have to do with the chapter that we can finish up with. Oh, and I found the quote. Here it is finally. Here's what Virginia Leffler said. She said, "Purity brings peace to me. I've had to battle my sinfulness to get here, but it was well worth the fight. I was beginning to fight the right person, me." And that's one thing I think that, you know, we always make it about what the other person is doing and that they need to be different. Especially when submission is like, but if, you know, they're too hard to submit to, or they're not doing the right thing here, or, you know, we don't make it about us. But in the end, the only person we can change is us. And there's just something wonderful that I've been able to work on some where sometimes I've been able to be just absolutely still before God and at peace with him, no matter what's, you know, all the stuff that's going on around me. And it's so wonderful to have that place of peace. So let's see, a couple closing questions then. What is, how can I, this is it, how can you be more devoted or consecrated to God? What would that look like for you? What would be different? Because if you remember, that definition of reverence was being consecrated to God, belonging to him. The letter is the H for his, we're his.
Repeat the question again.
Well, the simple is, how can I be more consecrated to God?
I guess praying more about being more reverent to God and others, you know. I think it's just, it has to be part of your prayer life that you want to change that, because sometimes we want to change some things, but we don't pray about it enough.
That's
So
a
I
very
think
good point.
I think that sometimes we just have to bring everything to prayer, because we like, we wanted to change some things, but we don't pray about it. So it's like, you know, how that goes, you know, like if you really want to change something, just pray about it. That's what I'm trying to do. I know that there were some things that I needed to work on, you know, in my marriage. And when I started praying about it, I was like, it bothers me before, but then I never pray about it. So when I started praying about it, I started seeing the changes. And I feel like my heart got changed, but it's because I pray about it.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. And I really do think getting in a more spirit, just getting it on our spiritual radar, that's what we're trying to be. We're trying to be, you know, just that we belong to him, that our life is his. I noticed when I was praying today, after I've been studying about it, that I started seeing, man, my life still has been so much about me and just my mindset and not trying to have God's mindset.
That's what I was gonna say, Kat. I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said. God says, if you love me, feed my sheep. If you love me, feed my sheep. So being reverent means giving somebody what you have. We have something special. We have a love, we have a connection, we have a community, we have something to go to. There are a lot of people in the world that don't have this joy, don't have this group of people, don't have these people that they can go to and talk to and be with. To be more reverent to God is to love his people, to love his sheep. Go out there and give people what we have.
Yeah, I agree, Kiona. And, you know, in this verse that we've had today, when it talks about teaching the older women to be reverent, and then they can go out and teach the younger ones what is good. I think that's part of what we offer them. We give them what we have. Like you said, we feed the sheep, we show them the love that we have, but then we also show them how to have the peace that we have. And it just goes so much against what the world tells you. The world is always like, you got to stand up for yourself, you got to make your own way. And instead, this way is the way of peace, is the way of the cross, is the way of submission. It's the craziest thing. Thank you, Kiana. That was great. What is one other question, and we'll close it up. What is one way we can be like these women? It says to be like, we can teach others to be reverent and devoted.
Repeat that.
What is one way we can teach other women to be reverent and devoted? You know, to
By being an example.
yes,
being an
that's
example
exactly true.
yourself,
Being an example.
You know, you be an example yourself. You know, you can't teach others what you haven't changed. You know, I can't say, oh, let me help Makia with this, or being humble, and if I'm not humble myself, because that's like being a hypocrite.
Yeah, that's very true. And obviously that's what in 1 Peter 3, that's what the most powerful thing was, is the example of the wife who is able to be have the purity and reverence of her life. So yes, being an example. Katira says, show them examples in the Bible as well. I love that. That is so very good. We need to keep opening up the Bible with people. Just read them scriptures. I noticed when we were reading what Gordon Ferguson wrote a couple of weeks ago on midweek, he was like, if I, one thing I'm convicted of the older I get is we need to read scriptures with one another, not just quote them like I was doing some, but actually read them. That's good. And part of that would be that we're intentional, that we want to help. It's a hard battle, ladies. It's a hard battle to be submitting to God and to not be just like, no, I got to do things my way, or no, this isn't right. So we want to help each other. We have to be intentional about these things. To really, or sort of reminds me of the verse where it says, encourage one another daily, so we won't be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. That we all need daily encouragement. Otherwise, we're going to get away from this. Just like I feel like this is like, oh man, I'm just getting a whole new level of this that I hadn't had before. Anybody else have thoughts on that? Well, let's close in a prayer. I'm going to turn the recording off. And I think this was a great message, Guy. The great lesson. I appreciate everybody's. I know we're growing. I appreciate everybody's input. I just feel like we are really having a great talk, and this is a great book. Thank you for the people who suggested it. So let's see, where is my recording button? Hold on. There it is.